Hello and welcome to the FinTech Finance Virtual Trainer. I'm your host, Doug McKenzie, and on today's episode, we're going to be looking at the next chapter in payments. And joining me today, I have Evelien Witlox, the Global Head of Payments and Cards over at ING. Evelien, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing fine. We're just discussing that we're really enjoying that the measures around COVID are reducing and that we're regaining some of our freedoms again. So that makes me really happy.
It's quite an exciting and slightly novel thing to discuss, isn't it? Just how we're going to be talking about the future of the payments industry, but also we're talking about just generally being let out and doing other things as well, maybe even buying things in person instead of over e-commerce as well. So I think it's absolutely exciting time to be in both payments and also in Europe. So Evelien, thank you so much for joining us here today. To kick things off, could you tell our audience who might not be aware of you, what your role is at ING and what it incorporates, please?
Yeah. So within ING, I actually have two roles. So one, I'm responsible for our proposition towards our wholesale clients, so the corporate clients. But secondly, ING is working towards a centralized stack, which is then a standard offering to the market. All the markets we're servicing in. So I'm also sort of an internal supplier for all our different countries, doing SEPA, international payments, but also the PSD2 proposition is coming from those systems. So that's me.
That's absolutely amazing, and what a time to be involved with all those changing global standards and the service directive from the European Union as well. It's going to be so exciting. Now, with that in mind, we've already touched on two very big changes to the payments industry just there in your role. But in your opinion, how has the payments industry changed in the last year?
Yeah, well, the last year has been, I think, the COVID has been an important driver for all the change that we see. And what we have seen is not so much real new payment methods being introduced, but we do see a very big shift in how those payments are used. And so we see a huge reduction in cash withdrawals at the ATMs, roughly half of that. While on the other hand, electronic payments and mobile payments went up. So for example, mobile payments grew with 35% only in 1 year. So that is really a big leap. And I think the interesting thing is that we see at the end of the pandemic that it's going down a little bit, of course, when we regained a little bit of the freedom, but that cash is not going back to the levels they were before, and that the digital payments stay high as they were.
It really has been the revolution that payments has always clamored for, to kind of say, look, these technologies exist to the wider consumer base, and now we're seeing people embrace it. It's very exciting. Now, with that in mind, after they've seen these new customer centric ideas and ways to pay, would you say that the pandemic has increased customers' demand when it comes to their payment experience? Are they now in control of what they want?
Well, what I think you see is that they were forced to use new payment methods that were there already, but like most of us, we are in old habits. Learning something new might be strange or challenging. So you tend to, so you always have people that are ahead of the pack and they want to the newest things, but you see a lot of people just picking it up when it's sort of common practice, and this has really give everybody the push to start using it, and from the numbers we see that they liked it and that they will continue to use it, and I think from there they will of course increase demand on, I think, especially the customer experience there, so that is not something that will go away. And I think we have got an enormous push by this COVID situation on that.
Yeah, I really think that has had such an impact on that. Now, has the rapid digitalization of payments from the consumer's point of view maybe highlighted the failure of legacy systems to customers in finance? Do you think that maybe cloud technology is the answer to solving some of those legacy problems?
Well, I think so. Working in the cloud is helping us to be more flexible and also to reduce cost. Let's be honest there. But I don't think cloud in itself, it's more a technology. And with technology, it's always what you do with that. So and yes, I think cloud technology is here to stay. If you look to ING, we also work with cloud technology, and that is also where we're moving towards. But as I said before, it's much more what you do with that cloud technology. What solution do you make available via that technology? So I wouldn't say that this is the answer, but it's part of the answer, and it's really an enabler.
Yeah, and I think you've hit such an important point. We can have all the greatest technology, but ultimately it's what you do with it that counts. And with that in mind, how can a bank like ING, which gets a huge influx of data from your customers, such rich data, how can you action those from the payment side of things to create proper insights for your customers and a better customer experience for them too?
Yeah, so we focus very much on our data to help our clients with their own data to improve their own processes. So, for example, we have now we are going through the introduction of instant payments. So in some countries it's fully up and running, and it's even the new normal, like in the Netherlands. And in other countries, it's introduced, but still needs to gain speed and traction. But of course, if you do an instant payment and your there is no instant reporting, then your clients are really at a loss. So I think that is the first and foremost thing that we try to do, is to help the clients with our data that we have from them to improve their internal processes and so on, but also of course exploring other possibilities to improve the services. But for example, in other domain, it's connected to payments, but for KYC, for example, which can be really a burden for our clients. We can help by the data that we have to pre-fill things so that people don't need to do these kind of things. So also there, doing digital checks, making life easier for our clients and making it more easy to do payments. That is something that we strive to do with the data also that we have.
That's absolutely brilliant. And it's almost unfair in the fact that for the customer, things are getting easier, quicker, but on your side, suddenly, as you mentioned, you're having to look at KYC at the same time as payments are going out instantly. That is such a hard kind of balance to find, and I think you guys at ING seem to have really done that in a quite an important way. Now, with this rapid increase in the volume of payments, while transaction value has decreased, I'm looking at the kind of role of a bank here. How can a bank stay competitive in the payments industry when suddenly payments are going out and 50-cent pieces instantly all the time?
Yeah, well, I think it little bit depends. So not a lot of our payments income is based on the transaction volume, but on the transaction value, but much more on the transaction volume. So that is one way that we keep up with this. But I think if the transaction volumes grow, a lot of our systems, and that's the beauty of digitization, is that there's only a marginal increase if you need to do much more larger volumes. So what you do see is that for providers of payments, it is becoming a scale business. Both for the run costs, so to be able to provide these at an acceptable and a very efficient level, but on the other side also to be able to keep up with the investments that you constantly need to do to keep up with the developments in the market.
I think that's going to be so important, just that keeping up this pace of innovation that, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, has only increased in 2020 tenfold. Now, with that in mind, what are some of the improvements that real-time payments offer your customers beyond just the obvious of faster payments? For instance, I've heard that now we're able to add increased amount of data sets to each payment. Is that correct?
Yeah, it differs a little bit per country, but this is something that is going to develop, and that's not only over the access of instant payments, but also of the move from MT to MX. That will also allow us to give much more data and data-rich information through the systems and therefore to our clients. But we think that the instant payments delivers a lot of opportunities for our clients to improve their processes, but also to develop even new services on top of that. So therefore it's very important that we roll it out. And what you see is that we are doing this now continent per continent, and then the next level will be how can we connect that it's really becoming a worldwide infrastructure, I would say, on which we can build the services that we need.
Well, I think you've really hit a very exciting point in the fact that obviously your position as a large institution puts you in a brilliant position where suddenly you can create this end-to-end payment system where you see the whole chain going through. Now, I've got to ask then, does that lend itself to the power of platformification, apologies, and the fact that that's going to only help you fight fraud, for instance, because you can witness the payment from end to end. Is that a correct hypothesis?
Yes, it is. But on the other hand, we see also like before, when you had a network, a bank provided everything, so the services and more the rails. And we see more and more a fragmentation. For example, if you take Apple Pay, it builds on the credit card infrastructure that's behind that. So the end-to-end chain, more and more players are coming in there. And I think that's one of the challenges that all of us have to. So with that, I think we make the world more competitive and allowing us to deliver better services to our clients. In total, if you have more competition, more players active in the market, that is always a good thing. But we need to make sure that in the end, we secure this. And that means that the players in the market need to work together on standards on this and exchanging information and making sure that we keep the bad guys out.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And it's exciting to hear about this this increased collaboration between other organizations. And I think that's another strength of you guys at large institutions is your ability to remain client. Banks are famous for it. They've always typically remained compliant. Now I've got to ask you, you've brought up these international standards and regulations in payments. For instance, we're seeing ISO 20022. Do you think what will this new legal ecosystem mean for your customers and going forward? And is it a bit of a headache for you, or is it actually the removal of a burden?
No, well, I think you should never call compliance or anti-fraud a burden. This is really something that is the core of what we do as a bank. I think being a trusted partner, which we have been over all the years, and I think one of the good things is that you see that while banks amongst themselves or institutions amongst themselves compete on functionality, but on fraud, we are one, and we because we have the same goal to keep it safe and compliant. If you look to the regulation, I think what is a challenge not only for the big institution but for all of us is that with everything becoming more and more digitized, we get more and more regulation also to keep it safe and compliant, and to find the right balance between doing all that and having a good and a customer experience. That is something that is one of the challenges that we have. So, for example, in the open banking, you get banks opening up like we're doing in PSD2, other providers working on top of those services. Together we need to make sure that the payments of our clients stay safe and compliant. So I think compliance is and will remain an important part of what we do going forward.
Yeah, it really hammers home the importance of banks. And I think you have, as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, that trusted role is something that banks do so well that it's always going to be an establishment of our society. Now, going back to the technology a bit as well, if we could, can cloud-based platforms enable organizations or institutions like ING to adopt these regulations seamlessly? I know you have a history of compliance, and it's almost not even thought of as having to do, but obviously an institution of your size requires a hefty bit of maneuvering. So is cloud maybe part of the answer to changing to these regulations?
Yes, it is on one part, and on the other part, it triggers some additional things that you need to secure. So cybersecurity is really a key item to be addressed, and that we address. But yes, cloud. So I think cloud solves some of the issues and brings new, not challenges would be too big a word, but new things that we need to take care of altogether.
Nice. Now, since we're already at real-time payments, I'm interested to see where you see the future of the payments industry and heading in the future. I mean, how can we get better than where we are now?
Well, I think saying that we have instant payments is, I think, conceptually right, but I think in practice not. So we still, and if I say we, it's the market. Yeah. We still need to roll it out in a lot of countries. It's also currently still not the normal. So if you look to countries like Spain, but also the Netherlands, there it has been introduced as the new normal. You see in other countries that it's still more an urgency payment than something implemented for everybody. So if we look forward, I think really implementing it will be important. And I think one of the important things that we want to do as an industry, and that's more than on the infrastructure, is, as I said before, to really connect cross-border payments to an instant payments transaction, so that you also cross-border, cross-continent can do instant payments. So that will be a big part of our development. And that is more the plumbing. So for us as bankers, it's really very exciting. But I think for consumers, what is much more exciting is that with that rails, you can build new functionalities. And that is, as you said earlier, I think before, and if we can then combine data with payments and digitize and connect networks to each other, I think we can really make, and we as banks, but also third parties, can make really great services for our clients and making payments easier and easier while staying safe.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, Evelien, thank you so much. I think that's all we have time for. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and I've learned so much. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too. It was a pleasure.
And thank you also to our audience as well. You can catch the rest of the series and much more over at www.fintechf.com, and of course, YouTube and LinkedIn, where I'll see you in the comments. So once again, Evelien, thank you very much, and goodbye.